Your commander decks feel slow. You play, you shuffle, and then you sit around and wait while everyone else is pulling ahead. I'm going to give you 3 ways to take your deck from a lump of molasses to a Jamaican bobsled team. And that last tip, nobody's talking about it. If your games feel like you're always behind your friends, or worse, the people at your local game store, you'll want to stick around for the end. If you feel like your deck takes a long time to get going, my first suggestion for you is to upgrade your land base. If you're running 2 or more colors, this is vital to your game plan. And if you're running 10 lands that enter tapped, I'm sorry to say your deck is gonna be slow. Think about it. If those 10 lands, or 10% of your deck, are entering tapped, we've got a problem. Chances are your opening hand is going to have one of these lands, and if not turn 1, it's going to be on turn 3 or 4, which are very vital to the rest of the game. In the top levels of Commander or CEDH, you never see any tapped lands because of their speed. They're just too slow. But in Casual, it is great to have them in your deck, especially because some lands are very expensive, and especially if that's all you've got access to. But my personal rule is to never have more than 6 lands that enter tapped in your entire deck. This might mean running more basics, but hey, those are guaranteed to enter untapped. And among these 6 lands, you should have conditional tapped lands like Fortified Beachhead, Deserted Beach, or Glacial Fortress. These lands enter tapped unless stated otherwise, which is just a huge benefit. Plus they're cheaper, you can find them most anywhere, you can usually meet the condition to where they enter untapped. And especially because the most expensive lands, the fetch lands, and the shock lands are just going to be unattainable to a lot of people, which is not a bad thing, it just breaks down to each individual's budget. But having the more expensive lands, unfortunately, is the fastest way to fundamentally upgrade any given deck. But again, if these lands are too pricey for you, just ask your friends if you can proxy them, or just use the conditional lands like I stated above. The next way to make your decks faster is adding more ways to see more cards in your deck. Let's say the average Casual Commander game lasts between 10 and 20 turns. You've got an opening hand of 7, and then you draw 1 card per turn for the rest of the game. So if the game lasts at least 15 turns, you're only going to see 22 cards in your entire deck of 100 if you don't draw extra cards. I know that sounds extremely basic and unrealistic, but that's kind of how games were for me when I first started playing Commander. I never had options of what to cast, I just was stuck with whatever was in my hand. You know, I'd draw a card, play a land, play a creature, and then that was it. I couldn't search for any answers. I didn't have any way to manipulate my deck. And drawing a card, playing a land, and casting a creature, that's essential to what Magic is. However, it's super slow, and not being able to find anything just kind of sucks. This is why having a way to dig through the cards in your deck is vital. Not only will you find better spells to play throughout the game, but you'll have more ways to interact with your opponents. There's a reason that certain commanders do better in CEDH than others. Thrasios, Kinnan, and Tymna are a few examples that have card draw stapled onto them, and they've been at the top of CEDH lists forever. So now instead of just drawing a card, playing a land, playing a creature, now all of a sudden you're drawing cards on the opponent's end step, you're cycling through the top 5 cards of your library, you're finding ways to get things into your graveyard, etc, etc, etc. Then you've got something better to play on that turn rather than what you had in your hand that might not be as useful. I super love cards like Sign in Blood because they're just so straightforward. Draw 2, lose 2 for 2 mana. You can never go wrong in a Casual Commander game with this spell. So if you're finding your game has stalled out or you don't have anything to interact with your opponents, you might be missing this crucial part of your decks. And if you'd like to learn more about the 7 types of card draw, I cover that here in this video. It goes way more in depth than I do here, and it breaks things down to a very simple level. Lastly, to make your decks move even faster, you need to be keenly aware of all the mana costs in your deck. Danfelder8062 responded to a post I made about things new players could learn or find handy. In his comment, he mentioned the way we play into our mana values. For example, in a draft or a game of Commander, if you have 1-cost mana dorks in the deck, you should be a lot more concerned about what 3-cost cards you're playing the next turn. This plays into a lot of factors, but especially your opening hand and how you've crafted the rest of your deck. If you know you have a high chance of getting an Elvish Mystic or similar on turn 1, you need to put a lot more stock into your 3-cost spell on turn 2. All of a sudden, you're not so worried about the 2-cost spells because you've already set yourself up to cast something potentially better at 3 mana value. And the same goes for any early game actions. If you have an opening hand with 2 forests and a rampant growth in it, you're gonna want to have something that costs 4 mana on turn 3. This all plays into using your first few turns to set up your late stage game better. One last example would be Cultivate. Now, Cultivate is the most efficient and basic mana ramp spell for any green deck, right? Well, while there's absolutely nothing wrong with Cultivate, it gets a lot of heat because it's played very inefficiently in a lot of decks. But to a lot of new players, that just doesn't make any sense. This is where being thoughtful on your mana process comes into play. Say your commander is Tanuk Memorial Ensign and it's turn 3. What's better to cast, Cultivate or your commander? If your commander has a mana cost of 3, you probably want it on the battlefield by turn 3. At least that's kind of usually how you want it to shake out. If you're stuck choosing between a ramp spell and your commander, you should probably always opt for the commander, especially with Tanuk because of his landfall ability. And sure, you won't have as much mana on turn 4, but you got your commander out, which is what your whole deck should be built around anyway. Now, that's one way to go about it, or what most people suggest is to cut out Cultivate completely, because your commander costs 3 and Cultivate also costs 3. So you'd usually cut out those spells by using 2 mana cost spells instead, like Rampant Growth, 3 Visits, or Nature's Lore. These only cost 2, making it so you can cast these on either turn 1 or 2, and Tanuk on turn 2 or 3 without any hiccups. And I'd argue you could put in stuff like Explosive Vegetation for the Tanuk deck, because now you've got 2 mana ramp and 4, so you can play the 3 cost commander right in the middle. Explosive Vegetation is one that gets a lot of heat too, but these are just examples. Ultimately, you should look at every single card in your deck and think, when is this most efficient? Is this efficient on turn 1, turn 7, turn 15? When is it most viable? Not every card is going to be useful in every stage of the game, and that's where you have to weigh the benefits versus the burden. Not every card is going to be the best on turn 1, 7, or 15. Every card has its different uses. Some cards fit all 3, some only 2, and some only 1, but sometimes the benefits outweigh the burdens. By implementing these 3 steps, upgrading your mana base, adding more ways to churn through your deck, and playing more efficient cards, I guarantee your gameplay will be smoother and you'll see a significant difference. Now, this can't change your play style or any mistakes you make along the way, but hey, that's what Magic's about. It's all about learning your deck, learning how to play better. And this is just a good starting point for beginning players. If you'd like some suggestions on how to upgrade your mana base, check out the video up here. That will go through every single mana ramp spell in the game. It's a giant list of cards and definitions and everything, and I'll update it as new cards come out. Thank you to my Patreon subscribers for their help, as always. Thank you for TCGplayer and Manfred Proxies. You're the best. Make sure you join me next week for your weekly dose of Magic.